If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz, and I'm here today to review the 2011 horror comedy, The Cabin in the Woods, starring Kristen Connolly, Chris Hemsworth, Bradley Whitford, and Richard Jenkins, directed by Drew Goddard. I think by now, if you were interested in this movie, you already know the twist. So I'm going to do the synopsis of the film right now with the twist in mind. So, when five college friends, which is Kristen Connolly, Chris Hemsworth, Anne Hutchinson, Frank Kranz, and Jesse Williams, arrive at a remote forest cabin for a little vacation, little do they know the horrors that await them. One by one, the youths fall victim to backwoods zombies. But there is another factor at play. Two scientists, played by Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford, are manipulating the ghoulish goings-on, but even as the body count rises, there is yet more at work than meets the eye. So, Cabin in the Woods is interesting in the way that it wraps its story. So, the story inside the movie is a horror slasher story that is fairly generic, but that's by design, honestly. It's got the same template of a lot of horror movies, which is a bunch of co-eds, a bunch of very attractive co-eds, go on vacation, go here, go there, and things happen that are beyond their control, and they get gored and killed and whatever. And honestly, I've seen enough of them to know what these are like, and this is fairly standard by that notion. I will also say that Joss Whedon wrote this movie with Drew Goddard, and you can tell right away with some of the dialogue. I didn't find it that annoying, but I know a lot of people now find Joss Whedon's style annoying because almost everyone's aping Joss Whedon. So if you feel that way about his writing style, then I would say you might want to skip this. But I will say, though, that if you don't skip it, I think the best part of the movie is the corporate conspiracy wrapping that is surrounding the entire film. So you have the five teens in the cabin. The other part of the movie is this weird corporate or government agency that is creating all these horrific things that are happening throughout the film. And the two main people that you deal with are Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins. They are very funny in this movie, I think. I think they're the most entertaining part, and just the juxtaposition of how corporatized and how this is just a job, to what you're seeing on screen as to what happens is probably one of the funniest things about this film. I think this film is much more of a satire than anything else, but it's satire in the way where most satires I think most people are used to. Those satires like Airplane, Naked Gun, they make fun of and roast those types of films, but I still think Cabin in the Woods kind of celebrates them, but also puts a unique twist into why is it that these slasher films happen this way? Oh, it's this mysterious company that's doing this. And I think that's kind of clever in a way. I think that's what makes it more entertaining than most of those types of films. Again, this is coming from somebody who doesn't like these films, so if you feel differently about it, then I completely understand. But for somebody who doesn't like horror films and doesn't like this formula, I found that part to be fairly entertaining. However, I will honestly say that the ending is kind of weak in this film. What I liked about the film is how it subverted a lot of tropes, and it kind of made you think differently about certain things when it comes to this style of movie. I wish the ending did the same thing. I wish that it kind of did something different in that end. I think some people will find that it is a little different from what you're expecting, but at the end, with the two characters that were there at the end of that film, I kind of wish there was more to that. I just wish it was a little more clever. It's not a bad ending, but I will say that I kind of wanted something better than that. But what I will say overall is that I liked this film. I thought it was fun. I think because it was comedic, I was able to handle the gore and the violent deaths. I don't even think the deaths were really that violent. It gets bloody at times in this movie, but I did have fun watching this movie. I just think that the ending and where they went towards the end could have been a little better thought out. But I can understand why a lot of people do enjoy this movie and think highly of this film. I noticed that the critics also thought this film was actually very good at the time, so that doesn't surprise me. If you haven't seen it and you're into horror movies, which I'm betting you probably have, I would say check it out. And of course, it's coming from somebody who doesn't like horror, so you can listen to me or not, whatever. Alright, and here are the footnotes for The Cabin in the Woods, and I have one. And my footnote is, it feels like horror films are self-aware about their genre in a way that others aren't. And I gotta be honest with you, I appreciate this to a certain extent. Again, I'm not a horror fan. I've seen other horror films, like Scream, like Halloween H2O, like the I Know What You Did Last Summer, that stuff like that. And they're not for me. But what I do like about these films that are self-referential and kind of poke fun at those tropes is that a lot of them poke fun at them, but they're respectful. They're loving about it. And while they're poking fun at it, they're subverting it in a different way. It's kind of like what Scream did in the 90s. They kind of took that formula and twisted it into something different, where it's still going on to this day. I don't even know why. Like, I've seen 3, I think, and that was it. I've never seen 4, 5, and 6. For someone who's into the type of films I'm into like sci-fi, romance, drama, stuff like that. I really think those genre films take themselves a little too seriously, whereas horror, even though like it wants to please its fans, and it does take itself seriously to a certain extent, it does make fun of itself, but in a loving way, which I think is really interesting, and I wish other genres of films do. And that's something that Cabin in the Woods did, and I enjoyed watching it. I was actually surprised how I enjoyed it, and I just kind of wish that other genres of films would do this. So overall, I will recommend The Cabin in the Woods. Honestly, if you are a horror fan, you probably have seen it. I will say that if you don't mind some violent imagery and some blood and gore, I would say still give this a shot. I think you might enjoy it just because of how comedic and silly it is. I think the best parts of the film are the corporate machinations of what's going on with Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins. I think that what's going on with the kids is kind of generic and just kind of boring, but I know that's by design because they were subverting it as the film goes on. Honestly, slasher films are not a type of film I enjoy. And I was a little worried that when I was watching this, I wouldn't get the jokes or the humor will be too referential and I won't get it. But I think even though I am not a fan of slasher films, I did enjoy this film, and I did find it funny in that clever way that it was doing the story. So overall, I recommend The Cabin in the Woods. Check it out on Peacock if you have not seen it. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple of days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you like what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.